Catholic faith and baseball. Today on The Simple Truth, we consecrate everything to the Sacred Heart of Jesus through the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the pure, strong, chaste heart of St. Joseph. I'm your host, Jim Havens, and our guest today is Kevin Wells, a Catholic husband and father, a former sports writer for the Tampa Tribune, and the first ever beat writer for the Tampa Bay Rays Major League Baseball team. Kevin is a best-selling author of several books, including Coached by the Curé, Lessons in Shepherding with St. John Vianney, which we talked about last time, and many more. You can learn more about Kevin and his good work over at kevinwells.org. But today, he's here to discuss Champions of Faith Baseball Edition. Baseball's biggest stars reveal how their faith guides and sustains their spectacular major league careers. The film first appeared in 2007 and is recently back and experiencing a resurgence as it appears on new platforms. It's a great excuse to have Kevin on and talk about the Catholic faith and baseball, so very happy to do it. Kevin Wells, thank you for coming back on. Welcome back to The Simple Truth. How are you today?
Jim, I'm great. It's always really good to be on with you, and it's a good time. It's summertime. We can talk the faith, baseball, and whatever else we got on your mind.
All right. Sounds great. So first, before we get to the film, you did share some of your story with us back in January on a Testimony Tuesday. People can go back and find that. And we learned about your love of Jesus and the Catholic faith and where that comes from. But what about your love of baseball? You did share that you played some ball for DeMatha Catholic High School in Maryland, but tell us how the love of the game of baseball got into you as a youngster and what it has meant to you.
Well, it was through my dad. So he loved baseball. And so if my dad was a concert pianist, maybe I'd be a big fan of playing piano recitals, or I give thanks that he actually wasn't a pianist and he was a baseball player and loved baseball. Thankfully, he also loved his Catholic faith even more than baseball. So really, I'm probably like most other young men that as a little boy, dad was in the side yard. I had 5 brothers, and dad played catch with all of us. And thankfully, he used that time to have a good time with his sons after work. But also, he'd find ways to speak of the faith, and he always made sure that obviously God and the Catholic faith came first, but he was a big baseball fan. Just a quick story while it's on my mind. I haven't thought of this story in very many years, but in 1983, the Orioles were playing in the World Series. It was a World Series game, and there was something going on in the church. I forget what it was, but my brothers at this point and I were watching the game, and we're not moving a millimeter. But my dad said, no, we got to go right now. We got to get in the station wagon. We got to go to this church function. And we're like, Dad, are you out of your mind? The Orioles in the World Series. And Dad said, get up. We got to go. So that kind of shows you, although my dad introduced it to baseball, he was really tethered to the faith more. So yeah, just growing up and playing catch with dad, that led to playing baseball. And all 6 of us played baseball at DeMatha High School. It's a really good athletic school in the Washington, D.C. area. So I guess to shut it down, I sort of was able to marry my love for writing with baseball, and I ended up becoming a Major League Baseball writer.
That you can share about just how, baseball was a part of your relationship with your father and your brothers. Anything else that you recall?
Well, Danny, my older brother Danny and I, there's something about baseball that is great for a man. So for instance, oftentimes men will feel uncomfortable maybe looking each other in the eye and sharing something indelicate or being vulnerable. And baseball always kind of works where you can sit in the stadium in a chair and you can talk to the guy next to you or the brother next to you or your dad, even about something that's tough, but you're still watching the game, and you don't have to look at the person next to you. But in every 15 seconds, you stop talking to watch the pitch to see what happens, and then you just resume the conversation. So I think baseball really brought my brother and I into a really close relationship, because every night, and I mean every night, Jim, we listened to the Orioles on the radio in our beds, together, and we would talk about the game at commercials. And so baseball, I just think for our entire family was a bonding experience where we just sort of said, hey, let's talk about what's wrong with the Orioles lineup. What's wrong with the Orioles number 3 starter. And it just kept us together, kind of in like that Little House on the Prairie way. It was just a simple way where baseball galvanized us.
Yeah, so true. Something so special about the game of baseball. Kevin Wells is with us. You wrote an article in March entitled Champions of Faith. returns to inspire a new generation. And you mentioned that it was the go-to movie for you and your son, Sean. Your repeated viewing of it became a ritual, you write. And we'll get into the movie next. But tell us about handing on the love of baseball as a father to your son, Sean.
Well, I mean, it's just, I knew it worked well with my dad, with his 6 sons in our home. And so you don't want to trash the things that work. So I just carried it on. It was just a family heirloom. So shortly after Sean was old enough to sort of catch a ball and throw it back, we started to play catch with the baseball. And you hate to steal, but I stole from my dad. And Sean knew from an early age that faith was more important, that the sacraments were more important. But Sean and I watched, so it was no longer a transistor. Now it was, the Orioles were on TV every night. So Sean and I were able to watch baseball growing up and just talk about the game. And just like my dad did with his sons, every now and then you can find a way to, if you see something on the field and maybe a guy losing, becoming a hothead or something glorious or heroism, you can always sort of find a way, in a subtle way, every now and then to drop in the Catholic faith or the stories of saints and how the saints are really similar to these baseball heroes, these paragons. And so, I just kind of stole from my dad and brought it to my son, Sean.
Yeah. What about this father-son aspect to baseball? I think about the powerful moment and line in the movie Field of Dreams, "Want to have a catch?" What is it about fathers and sons in baseball?
Well, that catch and that line is emblematic of, I think, what the world really needs, the domestic home really needs, because every home in America, Catholic, Protestant, doesn't matter. There's going to be some strife. There's going to be some struggles, and we work to overcome those struggles in a family. And sometimes you have to go with the thing you're most comfortable with. So in that Field of Dreams, in that line, there was an issue with Kevin Costner's character and his father, and they worked it out with a catch. And I don't know if there was a dry eye in America in 1987, the year that came out, and they saw that scene, because I think a lot of people saw themselves wishing, why couldn't I find a way? And maybe it's not baseball. Maybe it was playing the piano. Maybe it was just talking about, you don't want to say politics, but talking about the faith or taking a walk with dad. But baseball was always a way where when things are tough or were tough with Sean and I, we couldn't quite work something out as he grew older, all those things that come into a teenager's mind. Don't pretend like I didn't steal from Kevin Costner in Field of Dreams too, and grab the glove and say, "Hey man, let's go in the side yard. Let's play a catch." And about 25 throws in, you say, "Hey man, here's my heart, Sean. What's going on? Let's talk this thing out." And you don't really need to stop the catch. You can just kind of continue, because there's nothing hard about throwing a ball into a glove and then catching and throwing back. So it's just a way where problems are worked out and love grows. And that's, I think it's very healthy. It was a very healthy way for Kevin Costner and a very healthy way for my son and me, and also my dad and his 6 sons. It was that go-to comfort where you could have a leisurely good time, feeling comfortable with something you love to do with your dad, but also in the meantime, maybe work out an issue.
Very well said. Yeah, I think that's right on. There is that. That's what's going on in the film. It's a moment of reconciliation with father and son, and not much needs to be said there, and it's all happening in that catch. And I think that's a great practice, that fathers to be present, and whatever it is, but to have some way, some activity, to be connecting, to be reconnecting with your children. I do think about that, because my boys, baseball, they love the game, so that's pretty easy. We've got something in common there. But I think also with my daughters, what could that be? I think maybe for them it might be writing, or I'm trying to identify what it could be. But any other activities that come to mind between fathers and children that you think could also work quite well that way?
Yeah, you know what, Jim? The way I'm going to answer that one is with candor. I don't think it matters. I just think your daughter or your son just want to be alone with dad for a few days or a day, a weekend fishing trip. Even your daughter, "Hey, let's go to the mountain, sweetie. Let's go to the cabin." "Well, Dad, I don't fish." Don't worry, sweetie. We're going to have a good time. We're going to get some ice cream on the way, and we're going to get your favorite candy, and we're just going to get away. So I guess my answer to that would be, don't make excuse. Like, nobody has right to make an excuse to have the perfect getaway. Just find something and go.
Yeah, terrific. Kevin Wells is with us. We're going to get into this film, Champions of Faith, Baseball Edition. When we get back, we'll find out why this movie was so special, has been so special for Kevin, with him and his relationship with his son, Sean. So we'll talk about that and get into Kevin's article on the film. A lot of great stories to share that are shared in the film that we'll get to as much of that as we can today, but much more. We're going to dive into all sorts of things in the conversation today, but also we'll open up the phone lines. If you have something that you would like to talk about here today, anything regarding baseball and the Catholic faith, anything that pertains to the conversation we're having here, feel free to give a call, 1-877-511-5483. That's 1-877-511-5483. We'll be right back.
iCatholic Mobile is a proud sponsor of the Station of the Cross. What if your phone bill did more than just connect calls? What if it connected souls? With iCatholic Mobile, every text, every call, and every gig of data supports the Station of the Cross, keeping Catholic programming on the air. Nationwide 5G, unlimited talk and text, reliable data, and free roaming in Canada and Mexico, all on a network that puts faith first. More info at iCatholicmobile.com.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with our guest today, Kevin Wells. KevinWells.org is where you can find him. And before we get back to it here, I want to remind you, iCatholic Mobile, the only Catholic mobile phone company in the U.S. today. When you subscribe to iCatholic Mobile, you do help fund the Station of the Cross. You can check out iCatholic Mobile at iCatholicmobile.com. All right, so this film, Champions of Faith, Baseball Edition, you can get the DVD at SophiaInstitute.com. Actually, just noticed it's on sale right now, $8.99. You can also rent it and purchase it digitally on Amazon Prime. But Kevin, this is my first time ever seeing this. I think I maybe came across it years ago at some point, maybe doing some youth ministry or something, and saw portions of it, but actually got to sit down in preparation for this some weeks ago with my sons and watch it. So that was an experience. But why has this movie been so special for you? When you first saw it, when it first came out, I presume for you and your son, Sean, what about this? What made it a ritual for you guys to watch this?
Well, when it came out in 2007, I saw the title Champions of Faith, and I did, I to be honest, I thought it was going to be hokey. I thought it was going to be just basically Catholic Major League Baseball players just speaking in, I don't know, let's just say things that weren't going to be really inspiring just about their Catholic faith, just sort of in broad ways. But I bought it just to give it a shot and see. And then within about 15 minutes, I found myself weeping. Maybe I'm just a crybaby, but the storytelling, a couple in particular, was as profound as any stories I've ever heard told by any athlete. And before the end of the movie, I said, this thing was spectacularly done. The stories are raw. There's bench clearing brawls. There's radical life conversions. There's humiliation. There's a death. There's nothing practiced and sort of staged in these players and managers sharing. They share the heart of really some of them, what the dark night looks like and how they got out of it. And it's all centered on how they turned to Jesus and the Catholic faith. So it was a superbly done movie. And not only that, it not only was the storytelling excellent, but the vignettes, I should say, of these 5 or 6 players and other shorter vignettes of other players. But the really, it's in high def. It's got a good soundtrack, music. It's just really well done. I was so I've watched it many times, and I never get tired of it.
Yeah, the recent article that you wrote, Champions of Faith returns to inspire a new generation, and you wrote that the second reason you're writing about the film, you want to share the miracle story that's featured in the film, known as the Chicken Runs at Midnight, which occurred at the conclusion of Game 7 of the 1997 World Series. Can you share some of that story with us now?
I dare anyone out there to find a more remarkable miracle story in any sport than what the Chicken Runs at Midnight is. And it sounds like a silly thing, right? Like, what in the world does that mean? And I guess if I could sort of crunch it together, in 1992, there was the third base coach for the Pittsburgh Pirates named Rich Donnelly. And Rich Donnelly's 18-year-old daughter, Amy, was dying of brain cancer. And she was at one of the postseason games in Pittsburgh, very cold night. She was bald. She had scars on her head, and she's cheering her dad on. And because she loved her dad, she kind of knew that her dad, maybe in the moral category of life, wasn't the greatest, was making some pretty bad lifestyle decisions, but she loved her dad regardless. She really adored her dad, and she was at the game cheering him on. And they actually lost that the National League Championship Series. And after one of the games, to cheer him up, she said on the drive home from the game, she said, "Hey, Dad, when you're in the crouch at the third base coach and there's somebody on second and you're cupping your hands and you're screaming at him," she said, "what are you doing? Are you screaming the chicken runs at midnight or what?" And he's like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, are you screaming the chicken runs at midnight?" And he's like, "Well, I don't know what that means, but And so anyway, I guess cutting forward, it became kind of a family joke, the chicken runs at midnight, and no one really knew what it meant. And she died. She died 3 months later. And on her tombstone, the family decided, let's put on the chicken runs at midnight, and that's it, right? Well, no, that's not it. 5 years later, Rich Donnelly is now the third base coach for the Florida Marlins, and it's Game 7 of the World Series. And I was actually at the game. I covered the game as a sports writer, and I had no idea of the deeper meaning of what happened that game. So many baseball enthusiasts, many baseball fans will tell you that that was one of the greatest World Series games ever. Why? Because it went 11 innings. The team that won was not supposed to win. It was the Marlins who overcame the brash and swaggering Cleveland Indians. People gave them no shot, and there was 2 outs in the bottom of the ninth when this happened. So again, this is 5 years after Amy said the chicken runs at midnight to her dad that no one understood. Well, there was a runner at third base named Craig Counsell for the Marlins. And again, there's 2 outs in the bottom of the ninth. And he was known he had a strange idiosyncrasy where he would keep his hands up really high and would flap one of his shoulders like a chicken. And people knew him as the Chicken Man. And anyway, there was a batter named Edgar Renteria, and there's 2 outs. And Charles Nagy throws a pitch, and Renteria hits it back up the middle, barely gets past the infield, and Craig Counsell comes home with the winning run. And all of a sudden, the Marlins they've won the World Series. It's crazy, right? Everyone's going nuts. And Rich Donnelly's out on the third base coach and out on the field, and there's a big dog pile of fans. The game was in Miami, so everyone's going nuts. And all of a sudden, Rich Donnelly sees 2 of his sons running out onto the field, and they're crying. So he just thinks, well, they're ecstatic. These are tears of joy. And his one son, who was a bat boy that night, says, Dad, turn around. And Rich is like, what are you talking about? And it's like, Dad, turn around. Look at the scoreboard clock. And he turns around, and it's midnight. And he says, Dad, the chicken ran at midnight. Dad, Amy's prophecy was true. This is 5 years later. The chicken ran at midnight. Craig Counsell scored. So Rich Donnelly collapsed to the ground. He knew immediately, collapsed to the ground and just wept for the remainder of the day, remainder of the night. He was hoping that nobody would ask him questions in the clubhouse after the game, a sports writer, because he was in another world, just shocked about the miracle. Now, if that's not miracle enough, as I mentioned, Rich Donnelly was living a pretty poor life. He was caught up in sin, and this miracle changed everything. Now he's a daily communicant. He's returned full force to the faith because he now understands that God can speak through even baseball, through this strange thing that his daughter said 5 years earlier. So I dare anyone to get this movie, Champions of Faith, and watch it and not cry, because the way he tells the story and the way it's presented, you're not going to see too many other things as beautifully told. Yeah, amazing. Kevin Wells is with us. And yeah, you did a pretty fine job telling it right there yourself, Kevin. We appreciate that. And just an absolutely incredible, miraculous story. Another story in the film that I thought was pretty amazing as well, not to the same level, but still got my attention. And that was manager Jack McKeon.
and again, involving the Florida Marlins winning the World Series. But this guy's out of baseball for a couple of years. Older guy, age of 72 at this point. So 2 full seasons removed from his previous managing job. And you might have to refresh me on it again. I've only seen it once, but he was praying, I think, about what to do, and maybe he was offered another job at this point. I don't think he was. I think he was praying, and he's a Catholic man, and asking the intercession of Saint Therese. And then he gets a job offer, I believe, and again, praying about it, and says, all right, I think I'm going to take this thing. And he takes it with the Florida Marlins. They're off to a bad start, 16-22 at that point. And he takes them all the way from last place in the NL East, all the way up to be able to get a wild card berth. He went 75-49 through the rest of the regular season, and then beat the Giants and Cubs in the playoffs, and then the Yankees beat him in 6 games in the World Series. Very unlikely, and he credits it to the intercession of Saint Therese. I thought that was pretty cool. Any thoughts on that?
You just told the story, Jim. Yeah, I would have told the same way. It's the only thing I'll add to that is it's sort of another unspoken or unnoticed miracle. So I was a baseball writer back then, and when I heard that Jack McKeon, who really was done, he was way out of baseball. He had been in baseball for 50 years, and he's, I think, close to 80. And as you mentioned, the Marlins, they're not a good team. They're supposed to be good. They're not good. And out of the blue, he gets a phone call, and that was a stretch to begin with, to ask Jack McKeon to come out of retirement, because that doesn't happen. And he's like, well, yeah, Therese of Lisieux, I was just praying about this, so why not? This will be my swan song. And I imagine when he took the job, he figured, I'll have a good time, but we don't have a shot at the playoffs because they're just not a good team. So, but what I remember about Jack McKeon and that season of turning the Marlins around was, again, he was another one who was a daily communicant, prayed the rosary, and adored the Blessed Sacrament. And in the background, he's just got his little sideline partner, his little cheerleader, Therese of Lisieux, saying, "Come on, Jack. I know you're feeling your oats. You're older, but we got something good going here. Just hang in there." And all of a sudden, they beat the Yankees in the World Series. Now, I'm not saying this is because of Therese of Lisieux or because he was adoring the Blessed Sacrament, etc., but it's just another story of a man who speaks very openly about his Catholic faith and this strange story of coming out of retirement to lead a team to the World Series. Yeah, the film features players like Mike Piazza, David Eckstein, Juan Pierre, Jeff Suppan, Mike Sweeney, Ivan Rodriguez, Craig Biggio, and over 24 players, managers, coaches, and it said here they're speaking frankly about family, sacrifice, and leadership in this moving and uplifting documentary. Again, Champions of Faith is what we're talking about. You can find it at sophiainstitute.com, on sale there right now on DVD. You can also rent it, purchase it digitally on Amazon Prime. And we're going to get into some more when we get back. We'll hear from some of the players that are featured in the film and what they say about it all these years later. They've got some interesting comments that they make, but yeah, this is more than just a game. It is a beautiful game. I think there's something particularly beautiful about the game of baseball. I like other sports as well very much, especially football and rugby. I have a great appreciation for, but there is a special beauty to the game of baseball. But there's more to it than that. We're going to be right back. Stay tuned. Back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with our guest today, Kevin Wells, kevinwells.org. We're talking about Champions of Faith Baseball Edition. You can get it at sophiainstitute.com. Also find it on Amazon as well. And one of the players featured in this film, probably I would say the most famous of them all would be Mike Piazza, perhaps. I think Ivan Rodriguez, he's not featured that much. He's in there a little bit. Pudge, he's a pretty great Hall of Fame player himself, maybe the best defensive catcher perhaps of all time. But Mike Piazza, probably the best offensive catcher of all time. And so he says, again, Hall of Fame baseball player, 12-time All-Star, Mike Piazza, he says
says this all these years later about this film. He says the story unfolds smoothly and every piece is great and very inspiring. There's many times I was in tears just from the emotion of it. I've had some great moments in my life, but being part of this and being able to tell people about my story is one of my proudest moments, says Mike Piazza. Also, Mike Sweeney, former captain of the Kansas City Royals, 5-time All-Star enshrined in the Kansas City Royals Hall of Fame. He says this about it all these years later. I've never been more proud of anything in my life, more proud than anything I did on the baseball field. This is something I can show to my kids and grandkids someday. It truly is a treasure, and I'm so blessed to be a part of it. I think that every person in America needs to watch this film. So some really powerful comments from these players all these years later. Kevin Wells, what else would you like to share with us about this today?
Yeah, I'm going to echo their thoughts. I don't get paid a nickel for selling this movie. I don't, but I'm like them. I do encourage folks to watch it because what they share, it's not sappy. It's not overly sentimental and sort of Catholic saccharine. It's none of that. It's conversion stories. And in the case of the two fellows you just mentioned, Piazza and Sweeney, Piazza's a Hall of Famer, as you mentioned, considered by some maybe the greatest offensive catcher of all time, home run wise anyway. And it's a conversion story with Piazza, and it is with Sweeney. And with Piazza, even more interesting than the conversion story is some of your listeners might remember the Subway series in 2001. Obviously we look back from 9/11. It's a time of sorrow, but the Yankees and Mets played. And what the folks might remember back then is Piazza was a catcher for the Mets, and he had an experience that year or the year before where he was hit in the head by a Clemens fastball. Horrifying incident, hit in the head, and some people thought it was intentional. Maybe, Clemens denies it, but many people think it was intentional, and that's a horrifying thing to do. And lo and behold, here's the World Series, and everybody was talking about what's going to happen when Piazza faces Clemens again. What's going to happen this time? And a very strange thing happened. Clemens threw a fastball inside. Piazza hit it back up the middle weakly, broke his bat, and the largest shard of the bat tumbled towards the mound. And Clemens picked up this large section of the bat and rifled it at Piazza as he's running down the first base line. I mean, it really was a projectile weapon. He could have really, really hurt him. He could have killed him, really. It was, in front of tens of millions of people. It was a horrifying thing to see. And you can guess why maybe Clemens did that. I'm not going to get into maybe Clemens' state of mind back in those days, but Piazza had a very difficult time in the aftermath of how he handled that situation. Some people said, you should have charged the mound. You should have gotten in a fight, or, he was perplexed, but he understood that in these weird situations in life that he had to find a way to go to God for answers. And it was God who sort of smoothed out the psychology of it all, of how he handled it and how he needed to forgive Clemens, whether or not Clemens wanted to admit fault or not. And later on he did. So they both shook hands one time and said, hey, let's put it past us. But again, it's a breaking open of how a player goes through the machinations of incorporating his Catholic faith into making decisions. And oftentimes I think that's neglected is people being vulnerable enough to share how Christ came to them. And in the case of Mike Sweeney, he was an all-star first baseman with the Royals, and he did, in fact, charge the mound when he got hit. A Detroit Tigers pitcher named Jeff Weaver hit him, and Sweeney went out, and Sweeney was a much bigger guy, and he pummeled him. And a few weeks later, Sweeney was signing autographs, and this little 8-year-old girl came up to him, and she was crying, and she said, "You are my hero. Why would you do that? Why would you charge the mound?" And Sweeney later on that night just wept. He said, How would I do this to a girl? How would I make this decision? And that kind of changed his life so much so. Jim, this is great, and it's not shared in the story, but Sweeney reached out to Weaver years later. There was a lot of friction between the two of them for what happened, charging the mound, the fight, and finally Sweeney picked up the phone and called Weaver. Weaver picked up and Mike said, Jeff, man, I'm sorry. What I did was wrong. Will you forgive me? And Jeff said, yeah, you know what? I'm glad you called, and I'm glad we've patched this up, and I'm glad but here's the greatest part of the story of a man humble enough to make that call. Guess where Jeff Weaver is now? He's in the Catholic Church. So Mike Sweeney's witness of calling and having the humility to ask for Jeff Weaver's forgiveness. Maybe that was a thing where Weaver said, this Catholic faith thing, because Sweeney wears it on his sleeve, maybe there's something to it. So now Sweeney is a Catholic out in California. I'm sorry, Weaver, the pitcher who was not a Catholic, is now a Catholic out in California.
Yeah, Kevin Wells is with us, kevinwells.org. And I was very impressed with Mike Sweeney and the everything that he was talking about in the film. Very powerful, just seemed like a very genuine, sincere Catholic man. And then I did dig this up on in 2007. He and his wife hosted the Lunch for Life and raised $60,000 for the crisis pregnancy centers throughout Kansas City. They also honored a 19-year-old mother who was going to have an abortion but instead chose to have her baby. The Sweeneys gave the girl the First Life Award, which included gift certificates to salons and massage parlors and a grocery store, a baby stroller, crib, clothes for the baby. She also received $5,000 to purchase a new automobile. So that's some good stuff there from the Sweeneys. So we need to see more of that. Unfortunately, there's all kinds of negative stories in sports too, especially in this month where we get this inversion of things, and they call it Pride Month and all of this nonsense. And this really tries to get pushed through sports, sadly. And it's toned down a little bit, but still being pushed quite a bit, kind of almost compelling players to go along with this. And I saw today, got an email from saw the Catholic Action League of Massachusetts, our friend CJ Doyle over there, reporting on some stuff, some bad stuff that the Boston Globe is up to. And they also cite here that he writes, Catholics should remember that the publisher of the Boston Globe is John Henry, the owner of the Boston Red Sox. His wife, Linda Henry, is the paper's chief executive officer. Whenever you buy a ticket to Fenway Park, you are lining the pockets of a man who insults you and denigrates your religion. You can go find the article. It talks all about what's going on in the Boston Globe and the type of stuff that they're promoting. Catholic Action League of Massachusetts. I believe it's catholicactionleague.org. And you can check that out. But you see all kinds of stuff. I think about in football, how they have these cleats and people can write different causes on the cleats. You never see pro-life cleats of any kind. That seems to be the cause that is not allowed. Whereas you have all this other stuff. I just want, it makes me wonder why we don't see it more often where they're using their platforms, these big, strong men, when we have defenseless children being murdered every day, why they're not using their platforms, speaking out, doing more. Might be easy for me to say not having that platform that they have, but I don't know, Kevin, any thoughts on this and what you've seen?
Yeah, well, it's fair. It's probably tied into money too. But I'm going to say something, Jim, that would work 100% in this so-called Pride Month. So let's go to one of the best teams in baseball, the Yankees. Let's say it's Derek Jeter. Actually, no, let's just say it's Aaron Judge. So Aaron Judge right now is the best player in baseball by far. So Aaron Judge grew up in a Christian home, a very Christian home. Aaron Judge is a strong Christian. If on June 1st, 3 weeks ago, he came to the stadium and went up to Aaron Boone, his manager, and said, "Hey, Skip, I'm not going to play today." Well, Boone says, "Well, Aaron, what's wrong? Is it your hamstring? Is your arm sore? What's going on?" No. I saw the on-deck circle, and there's rainbows on both sides, and I see on the outfield wall you have a big pride flag, so I'm not going to play today. Well, I promise you this, because Aaron Judge is the best player in the universe, Aaron Boone, his manager, is going to call the front office, the marketing staff, the general manager, and he's going to say, "We got a big problem. Judge isn't playing today because we have pride regalia all over Yankee Stadium." Well, I promise you this, that stuff is getting stripped bare. And what happens is Major League Baseball teams, players are going to see one man, one white martyr who stood up against the pus that has spread like sludgy red tides throughout all of baseball, and say, no, I'm not going to have it. But Aaron Judge would start a revolt, and it would work because Aaron Judge is not going to be sat down, and other guys would do the same. That's the problem, though, Jim. There's not that one guy at that level who will do it. So Derek Jeter, like, I love Derek Jeter. He was a Catholic. I often think if Jeter was around now with the character and humility and the stature he had, I think that Jeter would have done it. I think he would have said, hey, guys, back then his manager was, I think, Joe Torre. He'd say, yeah, Mr. Torre, can't play today, bud. Can't do it because I do not support what Major League Baseball is making me wear on the sleeve of my shirt. I'm not wearing a rainbow there. You better believe Joe Torre is calling the owner. He's calling the GM, the marketing team, saying, hey, guys, we got a problem. We got to strip this thing bare. So really, it comes down almost to like Joan of Arc. It comes down to Maximilian Kolbe going to the starvation chamber. It goes back to all the martyrs. Hey, man, I can't live with this. I got to go to I got to take to the gallows. I got to step. I got to go to the guillotine. Put me on the pyre, Joan of Arc. Burn me up. But until we get like these heroes in the faith, like you saw in this movie, the needle's not going to be moved too much.
Yeah, no, you say it well. And pray for these guys. And maybe if you can get a note of encouragement to them somehow, write them a little letter or something. Maybe that might help. I don't know. But I think the most that I have seen recently, I think it was Clayton Kershaw, the pitcher, I think for the Dodgers. They had their Pride Night recently, and I think they put the rainbow flag right on their hats. And so he wrote some sort of a scripture under the bill of his hat that could be seen. That's about as far as I've seen. Have you seen any pushback from any athletes more than that recently, Kevin?
No, there's a player on the Washington Nationals, a pitcher, who speaks clearly on everything, the complementarity of the sexes, his pro-life work, the Catholic faith. His last name is Williams. Like, he's an absolute beast of evangelism, Catholic evangelism, but he doesn't have the stature of an Aaron Judge.
Sure. Yeah, that matters. And so we pray, and if you can encourage these guys, do it. But yeah, that would be amazing to see one of these high-profile athletes step up in such a way, and it would be interesting to see if maybe that would set off a bit of a wave of other high-profile athletes gaining courage from the first one to kind of stand up and lead the way like that. That would be awesome to see. All right, we're going to be right back with Kevin Wells. Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with Kevin Wells, kevinwells.org. We are talking about the film Champions of Faith. You can buy the DVD at sophiainstitute.com. You can also get it digitally, Amazon Prime. You can rent it there as well. And one more quote that you write about this in your article about the film. This is regarding Jeff Suppan, who says the following: for the guys in the film, it's been a while since we were all on the baseball field, but the stories are still so alive for us, said Suppan a few days just before watching his son play a baseball game near his home in California. But you know what? Our Catholic faith is still alive as well. For the players who shared their love of God and faith in the film, I know that as we've grown older, our faith has grown as well. As God helped us to meet the challenges on the baseball field, He still helps us to meet our challenges in a different way today. Kevin, what natural virtues do you think the game of baseball taught you or brought out of you? And what did you learn from the game that you were able to apply to life?
Well, the one that comes to mind is fortitude. As you get older playing the game, the talent becomes better, and you need to learn how to adjust to better pitching, etc. So you need to work harder, just to keep up with the talent, and that demands pressing on. It demands doing things you'd rather not want to do. Run an extra mile a day, take more batting practice, take more grounders, etc. So fortitude. I would also say that humility is very important with baseball, because Jim, it's a remarkable thought. But if you are a Major League Baseball player and you get 2 hits out of every 10 at-bats, you are considered a very poor baseball player. And for the most part, you're not going to be able to play in the major leagues. If you just get 1 more hit and you go 3 for 10, so 3 hits instead of 2, 3 for 10, you're considered a Hall of Famer or a potential Hall of Famer. So baseball is a humbling game because it's a very difficult game to play. I've often heard said that the hardest thing to do, the most difficult thing to do in any sport ever played is to hit a slider at 92 miles an hour. It's nearly impossible. So humility is another attribute of a baseball player who wants to grow. He needs to stay humble. But and the last thing I'll say is this. Boy, do you got to keep your cool because so many things can go wrong in baseball. You can boot a ground ball and lose the game. You can strike out to lose the game. You can give up a home run to lose the game. But the last thing you want to do is lose your cool, lose your head. And all the stars that I've followed over the years, my favorite player of all time, Eddie Murray for the Baltimore Orioles. You never knew if he hit a grand slam to win the game or if he struck out to lose the game. He just kept his cool. So I think that's important in the spiritual life, especially for a man, is just press on. Don't get too high because the constellations, they always fade, and don't get too low because God's always going to stick himself into it to pull you out. So just press on, sort of go back to that virtue of fortitude and beg God to help you do his will.
Yeah, Kevin Wills is with us. Yeah, so much there. I've been coaching some of my boys now, and now they're growing and more are coming into it. But I've been doing some coaching here in Little League for the last few years, and that's been wonderful because it's given me a whole different vantage point. And of course, when you're teaching something, it becomes a kind of another thing, and trying to figure out, okay, how do I wrangle these guys together? How do I develop these players individually and develop this team at the same time? And yeah, what are we going to put the focus on here? And so, yeah, just like you're saying, one of the things that I teach is confident, not cocky, right? You have a little swagger, not too much, right? But at the same time, yeah, you got to control the emotions, and that's difficult for men who are older as well. Certainly, we have stereotypes of parents that are out of control and coaches that are out of control and all of that. It's an opportunity for everybody to make sure that they're doing a good job in controlling their emotions and keeping things in perspective. And one of my favorite things too is just the teaching about focus. That regardless of what happened the last pitch, maybe you made an error, maybe you struck out, maybe something good happened. Whatever it is, that's over. Next pitch. That really has to be where the focus is, and so it is in life as well. And you can have fun working hard. If you're grinding through it and everything just seems miserable, come on back to just the love of the game. And I think that's what we hear from our Lord in Revelation when we're struggling in life. Bring it all back to your first love. Bring it all back to that love of our Lord and get back to the heart of that relationship and go from there. So I see analogies everywhere when I'm out on the ball field trying to teach these guys. There's so much. But I do find it a struggle. How do we do this in a secular environment, hand on the faith? And to me, the only thing that has really jumped out as obvious is that the people tend to use the Lord's name in vain in the secular world. It's a bad habit that a lot of people have. Maybe they don't even mean anything by it. And so every season that inevitably happens, and then I pull the guys together and I explain, hey, it might not be that important to you. It's important to me. Please don't say that around here. And here's why. It's because we ought to honor God. We ought to honor his name. And maybe you understand that, maybe you don't, but at least out of respect for the guys that do get it, I would ask you not to do that. And that's not a good thing for us to be doing here. So something along those lines. And then, you if it comes up again, you handle it. But that's where it kind of pops up, where it intersects very naturally. But I don't know, any other ideas of how we can share our faith, even in the midst of maybe coaching or being a part of baseball?
Yeah, there's countless ways. Just a few that come to mind is you look at Cal Ripken. Cal Ripken never sat down. All he ever did was show up. He did the most boring thing in the world one day. he showed up for a baseball game and he broke a record that will never be broken. He played 2,632 games in a row. So you tell your players at a young age, hey, it's you just got to do your best and show up, be disciplined, be on time. There's one player that did it for 21 years in a row. And he's adored by all the, in Baltimore, by all the short order cooks, the cops, the bricklayers, because they saw like a blue collar worker. So that's one thing is just do your best to show up and because your team needs you, right? So keep it together and show up and keep healthy. The other thing, I always think about baseball is one of the greatest things you can do in baseball is something that's rarely talked about, and that is the sacrifice. So essentially, you die. So you sacrifice bunt, you hit a sacrifice fly ball to advance the runner. So you're willing to take a death, which is an out in baseball, to get the runner to second base or get the runner to home plate. So that's another way to say, hey, that's the way we have to live the game. We got to sort of put ourselves last. John the Baptist, right? We need to decrease so the guy in front of us can increase. And I always like to use the analogy of sacrifice. And also, baseball is eternal. The game will not end until you get that last out. It doesn't end. Symmetrically, it is aligned perfectly. The pitcher's mound to the catcher. I mean, an inch further in, hitters can't hit. 5 inches back, hitters destroy the pitcher. Second base from home plate, it's always bang, bang as far as stolen bases. So there's some perfection in baseball, and we got to strive for perfection as Christ tells us.
Well, now they're messing with that a little bit, changing the size of the bases a little bit. We don't have a game clock, but we got a pitch clock, a hitter's clock now. But it seems to be working out pretty well. Any thoughts on that?
I'm a traditionalist. I don't like it, but we got to go with the times.
You're still wanting to get rid of the DH?
No, I like the DH. I don't like the guy on second base in the 10th inning. That really bothers me.
Very good. Kevin, any last words here in the final seconds?
Be like Cal Ripken. Just keep plugging forward. Do it every day, but let's do it for God, and then we might have a shot to get up and get that embrace one day, just like Cal Ripken did at home plate when he hit a home run. But we won it from the Heavenly Father.
God bless you all.